Okay, we are streaming live via YouTube. Continue with the preliminary hearing calendar. The next case we have on the calendar is at position 27, the state of Georgia versus Mary C.O. Maillard. The state of Georgia is represented by attorney, Mr. Brooks, you're doing that case? Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the defendant, Maillard, is represented by attorney J. Kim. Is for warrant number 2022 CW 50627 for the charge of battery. State is ready to proceed forward. Call your first witness.
Officer.
Sorry, just for the record, deputies, is this Mr. Maillard that's present here in the camera? Yes, that you, sir? Okay. Okay, proceed forward.
Thank you. Officer Garcia, if you would, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about giving the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and the truth so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State your name and agency for the record.
I'm Officer Garcia. I work for Clayton County Police Department.
Do you work in the uniform division of the police department?
Yes, in Sector 4, evening watch.
Sector 4, evening watch, is that?
Yes.
741 Dixon Road, Jonesboro. Would that fall within Sector 4?
That was Sector 3. But that night I was at the precinct when the call came out, which was right across the street from Sector 4.
Okay. That area that I just called out, is that located here in Clayton County?
Correct.
And on January 31, 2022, you were working in the same capacity?
Correct.
On that day, you say you were at the precinct when the call came through. Do you recall what the call regarded?
The call, it was a suicide attempt. The male was unresponsive in the bathtub. He had locked himself inside. And when I went to the call, I made contact with I believe it was the sister. The sister said that the offender was inside the bathroom in a bathtub, not responding to anything. When I went to check on him, I asked him what was going on. He was unresponsive. I checked his pupils. I asked him if he took anything. He's still no response. He did have a high fever. He was really burning up, but I couldn't get a response to him until EMS arrived. Once EMS arrived, he still wouldn't respond. So they decided to transport him to the hospital. And as they were picking him up, he reacted and started fighting and pushed one of the paramedics into the wall.
Were you able to identify the individual?
The paramedic?
Not the paramedic, but the person the suicide attempt was related to?
Yes, it was Mr. Maillard.
You advised that he became conscious and pushed one of the paramedics. During the course of your investigation, how did you learn that was an intentional act?
Because he reacted, and then as we were trying to escort him, then that's when he began to kick, and that's when the paramedic was pushed into the wall.
So not only did he push, but he also kicked the paramedic?
Yeah, so it wasn't a push, it was a kick.
Okay.
He kicked him.
And what happened next?
We were able to restrain him, and I was able to put him in handcuffs, and we were able to load him up to the stretcher and into the ambulance.
Was he taken to the hospital?
Correct.
Was he admitted in the hospital?
Correct.
Okay. All right, no further questions.
Okay, Attorney Kim, your witness.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Officer Garcia, so you had testified earlier that you had arrived to that incident location in regards to a suicide attempt. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that suicide attempt was pertaining to Mr. Maillard. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you encountered him, he was unresponsive initially. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You had written a police report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In your police report, you included as much relevant information pertaining to the incident, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall putting in the police report that the offender or the defendant was burning up and had a high fever?
Yes, just like I just said a few seconds ago.
Fantastic. So you had stated also that EMS came and then were checking up on him. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then shortly after the EMS started carrying the offender, was it on the stretcher or?
No, he was on the floor. So
Okay.
they were picking him up.
Okay. Was he still conscious at the time, or was he gaining conscious, or?
He was awake, but no response from, there's no answer. He was awake.
Okay. Do you believe Mr. Meyer understood what was happening at the time?
I believe so.
You
Because
believe?
he would only mumble when his sister would ask him things.
When he was mumbling, was it coherent?
I can't recall.
Okay. Earlier, you had testified saying that you believe Mr. Meyer was acting intentionally when he pushed or kicked one of the medics. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why do you believe he was acting intentionally based on, what his medical condition was at the time?
Because when he reacted when we were carrying him, he decided to kick the paramedics to get away from him.
Okay. Do you believe that reaction may have been because he wasn't aware of what was going on due to his medical condition at the time?
I can't say that for sure.
Do you believe this may have been an accident and not an act of intention?
Again, I can't say that for sure.
Okay. But you had just testified saying that you believe it was intentionally done, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But-
nice.
But again, I mean, I can't tell you what he's going to say or what he's going to do. But what in that time of moment, it looked like he was trying to get away. So he did.
Okay. So after, you guys, after the police ended up arresting him, he was transported to a hospital. Is that correct?
Yes, I rode in the ambulance with him.
Okay. What was the purpose of transporting him to the hospital?
He was unresponsive, and he had a high fever.
So he
We
was unresponsive, correct?
In the beginning, yes.
Okay. But what led up to you taking him to the hospital if he just, regained?
That was not my call. That was the paramedics' call.
What did the paramedics say after the incident happened?
In regards to what?
About, the kicking or pushing?
That they wanted to press charges?
Oh, they stated they wanted to move forward with charges?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, SJ Brooks, any redirects?
None, Your Honor. State is prepared for our argument now.
Okay. Do you have any other witnesses? No? Okay, Attorney Kim, any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready for argument. SJ
Your Honor.
Brooks,
This incident happened January of last year, January 31st of 2022. And after a review of Mr. Meyer's history, it doesn't show that he has any history. I don't know what he's been doing in the last year, but I hope that it included some form of mental health treatment or other types of treatment that might have led him to make a decision to attempt suicide. Given the officer's testimony and the nature of the case, the state is going to ask the court to dismiss the warrant and release Mr. Meyer.
okay,
No objection from the defense. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
okay. So granted, the battery charge against Mr. Meyer will be dismissed. Sir, that will, that's a dismissal of your charge, as, please take heed to what, SGA Brooks, said, and hopefully we won't see you here again. Okay? Thank you. That will conclude your preliminary hearing for today.
Officer Garcia excused, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Officer Garcia.
Thank you.
Okay, the next case we have on the calendar is the state of Georgia versus Kiaris Nicole Reynolds. I understand that was added to the calendar later. SGA Brooks.
Stays ready, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Harvey Williams, you ready?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
You say yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, deputies, will you bring forward Mrs. Kiaris Nicole Reynolds? Ms. Reynolds? Okay, Ms. Reynolds, good morning. This is your preliminary hearing. I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus Kiara Nicole Reynolds, warrant number 2022 W 5388 for the charge of battery. State of Georgia is represented by SGA Charles Brooks, and the defendant is represented by Attorney Harvey Williams. Your witness, SGA Brooks.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Morrell, if you will, raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State your name and agency for the record.
Officer Morrell, I work at Clayton County Police Department, Sector 2 Precinct.
And Sector 2 Precinct, in what area of the county? Is that Riverdale?
Yes, sir. Riverdale Road, Garden Walk Boulevard, and a little bit of 285, 75.
Are you familiar with an apartment complex in the area of the 5900 block of Riverdale Road?
Yes, sir.
Is that apartment complex here in Clayton County?
Yes, sir.
On August the 22nd of 2022, did you respond to a domestic violence incident at an apartment complex at the 5900 block of Riverdale Road?
Yes, sir.
On that day, did you have the opportunity to encounter Kiaris Nicole Reynolds?
No, sir. This was a separate incident. The incidents that we're speaking about is in reference to the warrant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, no, she was not on the scene when I arrived. I met with the victim, her then girlfriend, Miss Young, Peaches Young.
And what did you learn from Ms. Young?
She said they were in a physical altercation. She stated that it began out of nowhere.
Let me back up. How was Miss Peaches Young related to Kiaris Reynolds?
They were dating at the time. They were in a domestic relationship.
And did they live in the same household? Do you know?
Yes, sir. She stated they did.
All right. And what did you learn from Ms. Young?
Ms. Young stated that the two were laying down in bed, and then basically Miss Reynolds began striking her, pulling her hair, and she threw what she said, a chicken bowl at her during this interaction. She said she sustained a cut on her ear from the incident. I observed the cut on her ear, so that led me to obtain warrants.
And you say Miss Reynolds was not on scene?
No, she left the scene. Miss Young stated when she called 911, Miss Reynolds left the scene.
And did you attempt to make contact with Miss Reynolds?
No, I had no way of making contact with her.
Okay. All right. All right. No additional questions at this time.
Okay, Attorney Harvey Williams.
Officer Morrell, were there any other witnesses to this incident between the two parties?
No, ma'am.
And so did you ask the alleged victim for contact information for Ms. Reynolds to try to get her side of the story?
She just had a phone number, but she said the phone was not working at the time.
And you say you observed an injury on Mrs. Young?
Yes, she had a cut on her ear.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any redirect, SJ Brooks?
No, ma'am.
Okay, any other witnesses?
None for the state, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Harvey Williams, any witnesses?
No further witnesses for the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready for argument, SJ Brooks.
State of reserve, Your Honor.
Okay, and then Attorney Harvey Williams.
I would just argue that the state doesn't have proof that my client actually completed the injuries and she was not on the scene when the incident took place. They just have the word of the alleged victim, and that's the charges to be dismissed against Mrs. Reynolds.
Okay, SJ Brooks.
The state submit on the evidence, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, with that said, I do find sufficient probable cause to bound over the charge of battery, family violence against the defendant, Ms. Reynolds. They will be bound over to state court. That is the order of the court today, and that will conclude your preliminary hearing for today, Ms. Reynolds. Thank you.
Your Honor, did we ever decide anything on Malaysia Morris?
No, we still hold her. I have to go off
Hold
the
her,
record.
yes, ma'am. Okay.
To reach a final decision in that case. Thank you. Position 29 we have on the calendar is the state of Georgia versus Russell Rashawn Sessions.
State is ready, Your Honor.
Okay. And then Attorney Kim, you ready for the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Deputy, if you could bring forward Mr. Sessions. Okay, thank you. Mr. Sessions, this is your preliminary hearing. I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus Russell Rashawn Sessions warrant number 2022 WA 19834 for the charge of simple battery, family violence. The state will be represented by ASG Baker, and the defendant will be represented by Attorney J. Kim. Your witness, ASG Baker.
Yes, Your Honor. The state would like to call Officer Jackson to the stand.
Okay, Officer Jackson, if you could turn on your video.
Oh. Okay.
Hello?
Here you go.
Okay. Could you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during this testimony?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Could you state and spell your name for the record?
Officer Joshua Jackson,
Okay. Where are you currently employed?
Clayton County Police Department.
And how long have you been employed with Clayton County Police Department?
2 years.
Okay, and what is your current assignment?
Patrol officer.
Okay, and what does your duties entail?
Answering calls and serving the community.
Okay, and on December 29th, 2022, were you called out in reference to a disturbance?
Yes, ma'am. May I get the case number, please? Because they never gave me the case number. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's 2207-1763. Are you able to pull it up?
I'm finna right now. What?
071763.
22071763.
Are you able to see it?
I'm pulling it up now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I got it up.
Okay, yes, and were you dispatched in reference to the domestic disturbance call that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And could you tell the court the location of the disturbance? Was it in Clayton County, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and do you recall who you spoke to when you arrived on scene?
Oh. 17, 13.
Or did you speak to anyone on scene? Start there.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. They just told me the report just now. Okay, yeah. So, when I got there, I spoke.
I'm gonna ask you. Just let's start on because you got excited. Okay, did you speak to anyone on scene when you arrived?
Yes. Well, when the officers arrived before me, and they spoke with the mother. When I got there, I spoke to the mother and the daughter.
Okay. And during your investigation and speaking with the mother and the daughter, did you make any arrests that evening?
Yes.
And do you recall who you arrested as a result of your investigation?
The mother's boyfriend.
Okay, and at that time, you will identify him as Russell Sessions?
Yes.
Okay, and when you spoke to the daughter, what did she tell you?
She said she was her and the boyfriend, the suspect offender, got into an argument, and throughout the argument, he got mad and threw alcohol on her.
Okay, and did you establish at that time that the daughter was living in the home with Mr. Sessions?
Yes.
Okay, and he stated that he threw alcohol on her. Did she state how that made her feel? Was she threatened?
She didn't say it. She didn't say she was threatened that he threw alcohol on her.
Okay, and did you speak with the defendant in this case, Mr. Sessions?
Yes.
And did he tell you or inform you of his actions?
Yes, he said he threw alcohol on her. He did do that.
Okay. And so based upon that, you made an arrest for Mr. Sessions for simple battery family violence, correct?
Say it again?
And as a result of your investigation, you arrested Mr. Sessions for simple battery family violence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you spoke to the victim's mother and the defendant's girlfriend at the time, what did she tell you?
She said the victim mother said they got into it. I forgot exactly what they said they got into it for, but he was mad at her about something. Then they ran outside, so she didn't witness everything. The neighbor actually witnessed that alcohol was thrown on. She just heard them arguing.
Okay, so you did have a witness to corroborate that alcohol was thrown on the
Right.
victim. And when you stated that he was mad at her, are you referring to the victim or her mother?
The victim.
Okay, all right. No further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Kim, your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Officer, so you had testified earlier saying that the alleged victim had told you that alcohol was thrown in her face. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you arrived on scene, did you notice any liquid on her face?
No, I wouldn't look on her face like I don't see.
Okay, so you didn't see any alcohol or any liquid on her face at the time?
No, sir.
Did she smell like alcohol at the time?
Well, no, I didn't smell alcohol on her.
Okay. You would smell alcohol if someone threw alcohol at her. Is that correct?
Probably.
Okay. Furthermore, you had testified earlier saying that you had arrested the defendant for simple battery family violence. How did you end up arresting him for the family violence element of the simple battery?
Because they all live in the same house.
Okay, who told you that?
He said it, and the mother said they live in the same house. Then
Okay. Do you know to what extent, was it the defendant's house? Was it the alleged victim's mother's house?
I don't know exactly who house it was, but they all of them live in the same house. They said they all live together. I don't know who owned the house.
Do you know to what length they were living together?
I know she said they've been together for 2 months, so I'm assuming 2 months or around that time frame.
Earlier, you had testified, I believe ASG Baker had asked you, did the alleged victim feel like she was physical, there was physical and insulting nature of the action, that Mr. Sessions had thrown let me rephrase that. So earlier, you had testified, I believe, after Ms. Baker had asked you about whether the alleged victim had told you whether there was any, insulting or provoking nature of the action. Do you recall the alleged victim ever saying that to you? She felt offended or, that she was provoked?
No, she never said she felt offended. She said they just got into it and he was chasing out there and she threw alcohol on it throughout the argument. So, yeah.
Okay, so she never told you that, it was something insulting or, that she was offended due to this action?
No, sir.
Okay. Additionally, you had testified saying that there was a third-party witness, Miss Dara Paris. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's her name.
Did you speak with her in regards to this incident?
Yeah, I spoke with her and she wrote a statement.
Okay. So what did she tell you when you?
She told me she was walking by and she heard them arguing and things like that, him run up behind her. And throughout the argument, she saw him throw some type of liquid on her. She said she saw him throw liquid on her.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. ASG Baker, any redirect?
Just a few questions. Officer Jackson, you stated that they told you they lived in the same household. Who are you referring to as they?
The offender and also the mother.
Okay. And did the daughter admit that she lived at the home at the time?
Yes, ma'am, she lived there.
Okay, and you spoke with the witness who identified the defendant pouring some type of liquid on the victim. How
Yes.
long after you arrived on scene did you speak with that witness?
I don't know how long I've been on the scene. It
If you-
was
Rough estimate.
probably 10 minutes because the victim one who said our neighbor saw it, she went back and got her.
Okay, so it was 10 minutes after you arrived. And you arrested him for simple battery. Would you consider throwing liquid or liquor on somebody provoking?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you consider throwing liquor or any type of liquid on somebody as insulting?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, do you recall who called officers to the scene?
I believe it was the daughter who called 911. I don't remember.
And just to make clear, the daughter is also the victim in this case who liquor was pouring on her?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other witnesses? ASG Baker.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We're ready. Attorney Kim, any witnesses?
No witnesses from the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready for argument. ASG Baker.
Reserve, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Kim.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Based on Officer Jackson's testimony, Your Honor, he had testified that at no point did the alleged victim tell the officer that, the act was insulting and provoking. Based on that, Your Honor, I don't believe the state is able to meet the elements. We don't believe that there's probable cause for the simple battery family violence. And for that reason, I'd like to ask the court to dismiss the warrants.
Okay. Okay, I only have one warrant, correct? The simple
Yes.
battery. Okay.
Yes, simple battery. And sorry, Your Honor.
ASG Baker, yes.
Yes, it is the state's opinion that we have proven this charge and this warrant for probable cause. The officer testified that he had a witness in which he collected their statements 10 minutes after him arriving on scene, that a liquid was poured on the victim, and the victim identified that liquid as liquor. And it is the state's opinion that pouring liquor or any liquid on somebody could provoke them and could be of an insulting nature. So although the victim did not state that it was insulting or provoking, she took the initiative to call police. So at that time, it is the state's opinion that that was unwanted contact and it could be considered insulting and provoking. And so we ask that the court bound this case over to state court.
So noted, based upon the evidence presented to the court today, I do find sufficient probable cause to bound over the charge of simple battery, family violence against Mr. Sessions. That is the order of the court today. And Mr. Sessions, that will conclude your preliminary hearing. I want to thank both parties for their presentation of the case. And I believe, Officer Jackson, if you have no other cases on the calendar, you're released to go.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, position 31 on the calendar, we have State of Georgia versus Ezekiel Ward. State ready?
Could you repeat the defendant's name, Your Honor? I'm sorry.
Ezekiel Ward, W-A-R-D.
M-A.
I believe that was the one you said wasn't on your calendar, correct?
Oh, yes, Your Honor, we are ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will you need a continuance in that case? Because I don't see the officer present.
I believe Officer Singh, is he not present?
I'm here.
Okay, he
Oh,
is.
there he is. This is Prayer. Okay. Okay.
Could you put your camera on for us?
1 second.
Okay, let me officially call the state of Georgia versus Ezekiel warrant number 2022 WA19189. Charged with giving a false name, address, or date of birth. Secondly, warrant number 2022 WA19190. Given a false name, address, or date of birth. Is that a duplicate charge? Let's see here.
Let me see your, oh, it looks like it appears that he gave a false name and date of birth twice.
Okay. Okay, we're ready to go. The state of Georgia is represented by ASG Baker, and the defendant is represented by attorney J. Kim. Okay, state your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Is Officer Singh, could you cut your camera on for me? Your
Oh,
Honor,
you know what? I lost it. I think he lost us. I mean, let me let him back in the session.
thank you, Your Honor. Could you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Could you state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Prabjot Singh, Prabjot, last name Singh.
Okay, and where are you currently employed?
Jonesboro Police Department.
Okay, and what is your current assignment?
Patrol.
And what do your duties entail?
Patrol the streets, answer calls for service.
Okay, I'm gonna go to December 17th of 2022. Do you recall your assignment for that day?
Yes.
And could you give us a time frame of when you were on duty?
I started shift at 6 p.m.
Okay,
till
and
6 a.m.
6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And around 1 a.m., did you make a traffic stop or attempt to make a traffic stop?
It wasn't a traffic stop. It was a stolen vehicle we were looking for.
Yes, and were you able to identify that vehicle?
Yes.
And do you recall who occupied that vehicle? Was it one individual or multiple individuals?
Multiple.
Okay, and roughly, do you remember how many males were in the vehicle?
I believe there was 2 of them.
Okay, and did you speak to both males inside of the vehicle?
I spoke to the one that I arrested in this case.
Okay, and when you first came in contact with Mr. Ward, did he inform you of his name and date of birth?
So the way it started out was the stolen vehicle was located by another officer, and I was the 3rd officer at the address. As the car was backing in, the officer saw 2 people running inside to the house, and those 2 officers got the 2 people that were still left in the car, which were in the 2 back seat. I went to the front door, to the door of the house, and asked for whoever was inside to come out, and that's when I met with Ward, and I placed him into handcuffs, and I handed him over to another officer because I was still trying to get the driver out of the house also.
Mm-hmm.
After I got the driver out of the house, we were trying to get everybody identified, and that's when Ward gave Officer Lane a name that did not come back to him. Then he gave him a second name, which also did not come back. He did give me a name that did not come back, but I only charged him for 2 counts of not coming back. And then we called
Clayton County Police to bring a rapid ID, which is a fingerprinting machine, portable fingerprinting machine, which once he was fingerprinted, we got his real name and date of birth and showed he had a federal warrant for, I think it was probation violation.
Okay, and so you stated that Officer Lane asked him for his name. So you recall whether the defendant told Officer Lane his name was Joshua Sanchez?
That's the first name he gave to Officer Lane. And then the
And-
second time he gave him was Ezekiel Jimenez, 7/17/1999. And with the rapid ID, we were able to figure out his name was Ezekiel Ward, and the date of birth was 6/17/99. So he gave a different birthday all 3 times, or he gave a different birthday 2 times. So that's
Okay.
why I charged him with 2 counts.
Okay, thank you, officer. And you stated that once you ran his name, did any warrants or anything come back?
Yeah, it was a warrant, for a federal warrant from corrections for a parole violation. That's what it was.
Okay, thank you. No further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Kim, your witness. Attorney Kim?
Yes, Your Honor, sorry about that. Didn't realize I was muted. Officer, so you had testified earlier stating that you had arrived on the incident location due to possible stolen vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when you arrived at the incident location, you had stated that there were 2 individuals in the car and the 2 individuals had ran to the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was Mr. Ward the individual in the car, or was he one of the individuals?
He was the front passenger.
He was the front passenger. Okay.
Yep. And the female was the driver.
But did he end up going to the house? Is he one of the individuals who ended up going inside the house?
You talking about Ward?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So he went inside the house, and then did he come back out?
Yeah, because we had the house at gunpoint, and I said whoever's inside come out before we come inside, and he was the first person that came out.
Okay. You had testified earlier that you had placed him in handcuffs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So he was under arrest at the time, correct?
He was detained while we're still trying to get everybody else out of the house, because there was a total of 3 officers at that time. 2 of them were dealing with the 2 back passengers, and I got 1 person out of the house, so I had to still hold my position in case anybody else ran out of the house.
Okay. Did you tell Mr. Ward the reason that you were detaining him at the time?
I can't recall, but I detained him and I gave him over to another officer waiting on the female driver that we was trying to evacuate. I mean, trying to get her out of the house because she wasn't coming out of the house.
Okay. So he was in handcuffs, correct? He wasn't free to go at the time, correct?
Right.
But he would be equivalent to being under the custody, correct?
He was detained.
But he was in handcuffs and he wasn't free to go, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I believe also you did write a police report in regards to this incident, correct?
Yes.
Would you say it's a fair and accurate representation of what happened on that day of the incident?
Yeah.
You recall putting in your police report that you had discovered that another individual named Isabel had admitted to driving the vehicle, correct?
Yeah.
So at that point, you discovered who, was the driver of that stolen vehicle, correct?
Right.
Okay. Once you discovered that, was Mr. Ward still, placed in handcuffs and in custody?
Well, she wasn't coming out, and while she wasn't coming out, I was still at the house. While he was giving his name to Officer Lane. It was they was doing their thing on one side while I'm still trying to get her to come out of the house and waiting on more police officers to arrive on scene so we can get her to come out.
Okay. Officer, so Mr. Ward was technically, detained under custody. At any point, did you read him his Miranda rights?
I did not read him Miranda because I didn't get to talk to him until after the fact. We got the driver, Miss Rios, out of the house, and that's when I didn't read Miranda. But he still had to give us his name for being in the car. That's a stolen vehicle.
Officer, so you're asserting that the defendant has to provide you a name or any information that he doesn't have the ability to refuse speaking with you. Is that what you're saying?
I'm gonna rephrase that. He was in the vehicle that was stolen along with 4 other people. So we're trying to get everybody's name to be documented who was inside of a stolen vehicle.
Sure.
And again, this wasn't me asking him. This was another officer.
Okay. Do you believe that the defendant is required to give any information while he's being, detained?
In accordance to what part?
In accordance to the reason why you ended up, putting handcuffs on him. Does he have to say anything in regards to the investigation or anything like that?
I mean, that's up to him if he wants to say something.
Were there any threats made to him in regards to, him having to provide any information?
Like I said, I was trying to get the female out while he was being questioned.
Okay, so you weren't there. You weren't present when
He gave the false name, date of birth. No, I was not there present.
Okay. So this is just solely, strictly based on what Officer Lane had told you, correct?
Yes, and he gave that same name that he was given by Ward to radio to check for warrants and whatever, as we give a radio name, date of birth to check.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Ward spoke fluent English at the time?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So it appeared that he understood everything, any questions that you were asking him?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions from defense, Your Honor.
Okay, any redirect, ASG Baker?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer, you testified that the defendant gave a false name and date of birth 3 times, correct?
He gave it to me also, but I didn't charge him for it because I didn't get to run it. And I looked at it, and when I looked at it, I saw that it was not the right name. I mean, he gave me a wrong date of birth also on my notepad. But since I didn't run it on GCIC, I didn't charge him for the 3rd count.
Yeah, okay. So in one instance, he gave you a false name, correct? And this was
Right.
during your investigation, referring to the stolen car?
Yes.
Okay, and also he gave Officer Lane 2 false names, correct?
Yes.
And that was in relations to you all's investigation into the stolen car.
Yes.
Okay, and so, and as you stated earlier, he did have a warrant, a felony warrant for a probation violation.
As a parole violation.
Parole violation. So in your opinion, would that be the reason for him giving you a false name as to his identity?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, do you have any other witnesses, ASG Baker?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney, can you have any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready for argument, ASG Baker?
Yes, Your Honor, the state reserves.
Okay, Attorney Kim.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. After, hearing from the officer's testimony, I don't believe Officer Singe was the officer that was present. Believe he was told by Officer Lane that the defendant had provided 2 false names or date of birth. However, that officer is not here. Furthermore, Your Honor, I believe at the time the officer had articulated that there may have been reasonable suspicion. However, my client was detained at the time in handcuffs, is not freely and voluntarily able to leave. The officer never advised him of any Miranda rights. Officer testified saying that he was not aware, whether any officers had threatened or, forced my client to make any statements in relation to his detainment and being in custody. That being said, Your Honor, I don't believe the protocol of what the officer did would warrant any, testimonies that my client had provided during the investigation. I just believe there wasn't any probable cause and my client was never Mirandized. So for that being said, I'd like to ask the court to dismiss the warrants or dismiss this warrant.
Okay, ASG Baker?
Yes, Your Honor, it is the state's opinion that this case should be bound over to state court. We do believe that we have proved probable cause through the officer's testimony under OCGA 16-1025. A person who gives a false name or date of birth to a law enforcement officer in a lawful discharge of his official duties with the intent of misleading is guilty of giving a false name under this code. The officer testified that the defendant gave him a fake name as well as Officer Lane. And in addition, he gave a fake date of birth on 2 different occasions to Officer Lane. And at that time, the Officer Singh testified that this was during the lawful discharge of their official duties and finding out whether that vehicle was stolen and apprehending the occupants in that vehicle. And in addition, the officer testified that the defendant had a federal warrant for parole violation. So it is the state's opinion that he was intending to mislead officers in his identity. Defense counsel has stated that Officer Singh cannot testify to Officer Lane's actions. However, it's called collective knowledge. Officers are afforded the benefit of collective knowledge of their other employees. So it is the state's opinion that we have proven each warrant, have proven probable cause for each warrant, and we ask this case be bound over to state court. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so noted. Based upon the evidence presented to the court today, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over both charges for giving a false name, address, and date of birth against Mr. Ward. Will be bound over to state court. That is the order of the court today, and that will conclude your hearing for today, Mr. Ward. And I want to thank both parties for their presentation of their cases. Officer, is it Sai?
Thing.
You're free to go. You don't have any other cases, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have one other case on the calendar today, the state of Georgia versus Tevin Zingler. State ready?
Yes, Your Honor. State's ready.
Do we have attorney Harvey Williams representing the defendant? You ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, with that said, deputies, okay, this is Mr. Zingler, okay? I'm gonna officially call the state of Georgia versus Tevin Zingler. Sir, this is your preliminary hearing for warrant number 2022 WA19762 for the charge of battery family violence. The state of Georgia is represented by ASG Rakaya Baker, and the defendant will be represented by attorney Harvey Williams. You can proceed forward with your case, ASG Baker.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, the state would like to call Officer Bill to the stand. Could you turn your camera on and unmute for me? Okay, thank you. Could you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during your testimony?
I do.
Okay, could you state and spell your name for the record?
Marcus Bell. First name is Marcus. Last name is Bell. Bell.
And where are you currently employed?
The Riverdale Police Department.
Okay. And what is your current assignment at Riverdale Police Department?
I'm a patrol officer.
And as a patrol officer, what do your duties entail?
Calls of service and patrol.
Okay. And do you recall your assignment for December 28th, 2022?
Yes, ma'am. I was patrol officer.
Okay. And around 3:30, did you receive a dispatch?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that in reference to a domestic disturbance call?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And do you recall the location of that, the location you were dispatched to?
It was Legacy Apartments in
Okay.
Riverdale, Georgia.
And is that in Clayton County, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene, did you speak with anyone?
Yes, ma'am. I spoke with Miss Jacobs, I believe that's her name, and Mr. Ziegler.
Okay. When you spoke with Ms. Kayla Jacobs, what did she inform you was the nature of the call?
She informed me that she was assaulted by her child's father, which makes it it's a domestic.
Okay, and when she informed you that she was assaulted, did she inform you of how he assaulted her?
She said that he struck her with her child's Nerf gun, and also struck her in the face with a closed fist.
Okay, so, and you're referring to a Nerf gun as the toy, right?
The toy gun, that's correct.
Okay. Did you observe any injuries on the victim, Ms. Kayla Jacobs?
Yes, ma'am. She was bleeding from the nose area and also on the facial area. She was bleeding.
Okay.
Basically,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
you finish. I'm sorry, that's me.
Okay. Her face was basically covered in blood when we got there.
Okay. And did you speak with the defendant?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And what did he inform you? What happened?
He basically just stated that she was drunk. And no time did he say he did it. No time did he say he didn't do it. He was like,
Okay.
she's drunk.
But you did observe injuries to her face, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
Okay. And how did you, through your investigation, how did you make an arrest of the defendant? Was he on scene?
Yes, ma'am. He was on scene. He was packing his bag, getting ready to leave.
Okay.
When his bags were in the living room. He was, I guess, getting ready to take his bags out the door when we arrived.
Okay. And no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Attorney Harvey Williams, your witness.
You stated the defendant said that he did not strike her, or did he not comment on her injuries?
And no time did he comment on the injuries. Only thing he basically kept saying was, she was drunk.
Mhm. And the victim did say that he struck her, right?
Oh, your phone had went out.
Oh, sure. I said the victim said that he struck her in the face, you said.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And she was bleeding, you said, from the face.
That's correct. That's correct as well.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, A.G. Baker, any other witnesses?
No other witnesses, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, did you have any redirect? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask one question.
Okay,
Did the victim inform you that she fell at any time during this incident or anything else caused her injuries?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Attorney Harvey Williams, any witnesses?
No witnesses for the defense.
Okay,
Your
we're
Honor.
ready for argument. A.S.G. Baker,
Reserve, Your Honor.
Attorney Harvey Williams.
I would say that we're just asking that they didn't prove all the elements. There was conflicting testimony of how the injuries came about. And so we ask you to dismiss the warrant.
Okay, and then A.S.G. Baker.
Your Honor, we ask that you bound this case over to state court. The state does feel like we have proven the elements of battery with probable cause. Under OCGA 16-523.1, a person commits the offense of battery when he or she intentionally causes substantial physical harm or visible bodily harm to another. The officer testified that when he arrived on the scene, Ms. Jacobs' face was covered in blood due to her lip bleeding. Her lip being busted and her nose bleeding. So at that time, it is the state's opinion that that was visible bodily harm. In addition, the victim testified that the defendant hit her with a Nerf gun and also hit her with his closed fist. So it is the state's position that we have proven each element with probable cause, and we ask that this case be bound over to state court. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Based upon the evidence presented to the court today, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over to state court the charge of battery family violence against Mrs. Ziegler. That will be the order of the court today, and that will conclude your preliminary hearing for today, Mr. Ziegler. I want to thank both parties for their presentation of the case. And then I believe Officer Bell, is it Officer Bell, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You're released to go.
All right, thank
So
you.
it's my understanding the only other outstanding issue on the calendar is the Mars case, I believe.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, well, I'll go off the record. We'll be in brief recess and then I'll return with a decision on the Mars case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.